guys, we're going to go through the First Light trailer for the new James Bond game. And we're going to go through it like frame by frame if we need to look at all the Easter eggs and all of the cool, interesting details. So let's go and see what happens. I'm so stoked about this video game. I really am. What I kind of like is the fact that these days we've become so ADHD that you need to have a 4-second teaser before anybody can work themselves up to watch a 3-minute trailer. But that was pretty attention grabbing. So here we go. First Light 007. This is, I'm excited. This is the first James Bond video game that I paid attention to for donkey's years. Very quickly. Alpha footage powered by Glacier, mix of gameplay, cutscenes, and in-engine footage. So I think what that means is the everything that we're going to see here is pretty close to what the video game is supposed to look like when it actually launches. When you actually play the video game, it's going to look like what we are seeing right now, which is kind of cool, because I know a few years ago they used to have these beautifully rendered cutscenes for everything, and then when you actually played the video game, the graphics weren't very good.
His parents cut their own rope to save him. He watched them fall, then found his way off that mountain. He was 11 years old.
I love that. Okay, another 4 seconds into the trailer, and what have we got? We've got one of the most accurate biographies of James Bond as a character we've ever had, probably gone deeper than we've ever had in any of the movies. So Ian Fleming writes about how James Bond's parents died in a climbing accident, and that's been mentioned once or twice in the movies. But this paints a whole new picture. There he was, 11 years old, climbing with his parents. His parents had to cut their own rope to save him. He watched them fall, and then he climbed off that mountain at just 11 years old. I mean, that's a very traumatic backstory to have, and it establishes a lot about who James Bond is as a character. And I love it because it is pure Ian Fleming. They took that directly from the books, and it shows they're paying attention. It gets James Bond fans like me super excited. And I really like it because I hate the way people rewrite character biographies. They deconstruct characters and stuff. I mean, so far, we're getting the James Bond that we've always wanted.
He then started a grand tour of every major boarding school in Britain.
Always at the top of his class.
Always at odds with authority. Same thing in the Navy.
His superiors all praise his instincts.
And they're all in need of early retirement. Nobody knows what to do with him, Mom.
No. And I suspect he feels the same way. But
now, that was so interesting. Very quickly, I'm going to go through some of the things you just said. So once again, we got more of James Bond's biography. He went to all of the boarding schools in Great Britain. And I like that because that obviously shows that the James Bond that we're going to have in this game follows, again, very closely to Ian Fleming's character biography of James Bond, because James Bond was part of the upper middle class of Britain. He went to the best boarding schools. I mean, I don't know, James Bond went to Eton, I think, and then Fetz, but anyway, it shows James Bond comes from the very specific social class that the literary James Bond and the James Bond of the movies did. So I really like that. It establishes that he was, top of his class, so he's super smart. I don't know if the James Bond in the books was always super smart. Ian Fleming wasn't necessarily the greatest scholar, but always at odds with authority. That's the James Bond we know and love. And then they mentioned the same thing in the Navy. So once again, we are getting this character biography of James Bond that is absolutely congruent with what Ian Fleming wrote, which I am really excited about. Clearly, they are tracking this and doing their homework with it. Then I think it's very interesting that she says all of his superiors, had faith in him, and this other chap, Greenway or something, says, and they're all due for early retirement. I kind of like this, and I kind of like this for a deeper reason. Let's go back a little in the video. We see 2 new characters. So we've got this lady here, and I think she is M. And I think she's M because we are very clearly in M's office. It looks very similar to M's office from No Time to Die and Spectre. We've got like a little decanter over here and stuff like that. I like her. I think she is meant to be M. And I think that works because it's in keeping with for most people who play James Bond video games, M has always been Judi Dench, and so keeping up with a female M, I think, is great. And I like that because it's also an accurate representation of what the British Secret Service probably looks like. We had Stella Millington, who was a woman who was in charge of MI5 back when Judi Dench was M. So, yeah, Britain is a place where I think we have a lot of equality. So you can have, even in the higher echelons of the civil service, people who aren't just stuffy white men. And obviously, this lady here, she looks like she is Southeast Asian or Indian or something. But then again, do you think in Britain that's absolutely normal? We had just recently our Prime Minister was Rishi Sunak, who was Hindu, and he was from Winchester, actually, my hometown. And he was discussing with the Prime Minister of Scotland, who was Muslim, whether whether Scotland would seek its independence or not, whether the British Union would stay together. And I found that such an interesting thing, because just 70 years earlier, in 1947, there was a bunch of stuffy white Brits had been like, hey, we're going to separate India and Pakistan, and drew an arbitrary line on a map. But I just think 70 years later, the people in charge of Britain are more representative of the country that we divided up than the stuffy white people who did the dividing. But I think that's interesting because James Bond, Ian Fleming's James Bond, has always been a white character, and people have always gone on about, oh, is there going to be a black Bond? Are we going to have some diversity in Bond? Is Bond going to be a woman? And I think the really interesting thing with what they're doing here is, if you have a more diverse group of supporting characters, it means that you get away with keeping James Bond the character that he is, according to Ian Fleming, who he should remain. And I kind of think that the dialogue that they're having here about how his superiors always had faith in him, and then the other guys like, well, they're all due for early retirement. Maybe that's like a subtext of this James Bond comes from the old school posh upper class white people, and he is not representative perhaps of the modern day Secret Service, the modern day British civil service. I don't know, I might be reading too much into that, but I think it's kind of an interesting thing.
His superiors all praise his instincts.
And they're all in need of early retirement. Nobody knows what to do with him, Mom.
I find this guy kind of interesting.
No, and I suspect he feels the same way. But
yeah, I find it's kind of interesting. We could look at him, and I think when we first meet this chap Greenway, here we go. Let's
his superiors all.
Oh, let's see. There we go. Here's this chap Greenway. I like that. Again, in this day and age, if you look at the British civil service, it is a very multicultural place, because Britain is now a very multicultural country. So him being an old veteran kind of thing, and an older gentleman like that, he probably did have the absolute classic British upbringing. So I like this. I'm down with these two characters. I don't think it's remotely woke that you have non-white characters in a James Bond game. I think we can just ignore the people who are having that conversation. My instincts that this is M's office are also reinforced by the fact that we've got this padded door here. And when I was a kid, I remember seeing the padded door in M's office and being like, why does he have a padded door? And I think it's because if you ever watch old episodes of The Saint or something, you always see the Saint, if he wants to listen in on a conversation, he'll put a glass up against the door because it's the thinnest part, and you can hear everything that's going on next door. And I genuinely think the reason they had these big padded doors was to stop sound travelling through. So the head of the British Secret Service, the most important Secret Service operation in the country, didn't have their secrets leaking through a rattling door. Final thing I'm going to look at before we move on, and I know I'm being very tedious here, is the very first thing we see. Here we go. So, throw down this this folder, which seems to be the folder about James Bond. We can tell because it's got Bond James written on it. Just an interesting collection of stuff here. We've got a mobile phone here. Now, I don't know about you, but that looks like a super old school mobile phone. I had a phone like that about 2004, 2005 when I was running around Paris, which is interesting because at first I was like, oh, is this game set in like the early 2000s? But then I'm like, no, look at this. We've got a QR code right on the dossier here, and that clearly shows that the game is set in the modern day. And what I will say is perhaps they have the old school mobile phone, because I do believe a lot of intelligence operatives have older style phones because they're less easy to hack, trace, and all of that. In fact, if you look recently, there was that bizarre story of Mossad blowing up all of the pages belonging to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah, the organization, had rejected using smartphones because Israel could track them all, and moved on to old school pages, 1990s technology, because it was less easy to track. And of course that didn't work out so well for them, but I think that's interesting. So I think this maybe that just shows that IO Interactive, when they made this game, they know a bit about the intelligent operations. They did some research and were like, oh, she'd probably have an old school phone. There we go. So that's all I've got to say about that. Let's go back to where we were a little later on in the story. Yes, she'd come up and she was looking out of the window, and...
Oh, and I suspect he feels the same way. But what he did in Iceland...
What he did in Iceland was insubordination.
So now we're starting to see James Bond here. So, who is he? James Bond is clearly an operative. He did something in Iceland. He's punching this dude here. Who is this? Now, it's interesting. Where are we? We only get a few snippets of this. This guy seems to be a terrorist because he's wearing a mask. Only terrorists wear masks. Which, if you've been watching the news with ICE rounding people up, you think, maybe wearing a mask isn't a great look if you're trying to be like a respected member of law enforcement. But he's wearing a mask. We've got the curved things back here. Does that mean he's in an aeroplane or an underground bunker? I don't know.
Was ill-disciplined, utterly reckless. He only survived thanks to blind luck. Give me one good reason to put him in the program, Mom.
I think you just covered them all, Greenway.
Now, I like that. Give him a good reason to put him in the program. What program are we talking about? I think it's very clear that that's going to be the 00 program. So I think we are having the absolute origin story of James Bond as a 00 agent, which I think is interesting. A lot of people have been like, well, aren't you rehashing territory from Casino Royale? And I'm kind of like, well, maybe, but Casino Royale did it differently. And Daniel Craig, he was relatively mature when he became the 00 agent in Casino Royale. And they mention it in the books, and we've had the Young Bond series. I think we're going into uncharted territory here, but I kind of like it. So we've learned now the whole biography of James Bond as a character, and we're not even a minute into the trailer. He is clearly a reckless badass who can get stuff done, and they're trying to think about recruiting him into this 00 program.
It's really quite simple. Bond is a bullet without a target. Let's give him one.
Now look at this. This is our new James Bond. I watched this for the first time and I'm like, oh, bloody hell, he's a young un, isn't he? And I guess maybe I'm getting old because I believe the character is meant to be like 30. But yeah, he's young. And I love it. What an interesting take on James Bond. So we got here, he's young, but he's got that scar on his cheek, which I find really interesting because we've never had an actor in the movies who've got that, but it was very clearly written in the James Bond books that he had a scar on his cheek. He doesn't have the comma of hair falling over his eye, but fair enough. Blue eyes, white chap, 30s. This ticks all the boxes. It is not who I would expect James Bond to look like, but I'm down with it because it works. One thing people have been saying is that he looks a lot like James Bond Jr. back in the early 90s. And I remember watching as a young teenager Saturday morning cartoons, and they had James Bond Jr., which is about James Bond's nephew, I think, who went to some fancy school, and there was like the young Q and the young Moneypenny, and they had different versions of Jaws and stuff like that. It was a goofy cartoon. I kind of enjoyed it. But if you look at the pictures of James Bond Jr. compared to this James Bond, it's like, they're really close, aren't they? I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to put up a picture of the young James Bond. James Bond Jr., sorry. There we go. That's interesting. That's a little tidbit. And I don't hate that either. I mean, I don't think this is meant to be James Bond Jr. This is very clearly meant to be James Bond. But I kind of like the way they've got a nod to that. And so he's in a plane here. Let's check out his outfit. I mean, I like it. This is... David Zaritsky could make a video about this. He's got that cool jacket. He's got the collar thrown up, a t-shirt underneath. It's an outfit that's very reminiscent of like what Daniel Craig wore in Quantum of Solace, or that outfit when he ripped the top off the Aston Martin V8 in No Time to Die. So I like it. I like it a lot. And then that smirk. I love that smirk because he's cocky. I like it. We got a brand new James Bond who's young and cocky. And James Bond has always been a bit up his own arse, a bit serious. Yes, he's witty, and yes, sometimes he can be mischievous, but he's always a bit serious. So a little cocky James Bond, I'm down with. And then we get the NGM line. Love it.
Do you have an appointment?
The name's Bond.
James Bond.
Okay. I love this scene because James Bond is clearly walking into MI6 headquarters. And if you remember that iconic scene from No Time to Die, where James Bond, Daniel Craig, walks in and is like, the name's Bond. And then she looks blank and he goes, James Bond. The whole point of that was, look how washed up James Bond is. He's irrelevant. Nobody even knows who he is anymore. And with this scene here, they've turned that around. He walks in, the name's Bond. He's confident as hell, cocky, got that little smirk on him. And this lady here, who I am assuming immediately is Moneypenny, carrying the same dossier, it's the same folder that we saw earlier. She already knows his name. She knows who he is. So we have turned that around. In No Time to Die, he was old and irrelevant. And we turn around here, he's young and very relevant. So I kind of dig that. Let's go back just a little bit. Here we go. So I think this almost looks exactly like the front room from No Time to Die. He's moving something off his ear, like an earpiece or something. So I wonder why that is. Maybe he just come from something and he has to remove the earpiece off.
The name's Bond.
James Bond.
Oh, and let's see. We want to see... Here we go. So we're in the front desk here. This does look very, very similar to like the set at the beginning of No Time to Die when he gets called back in. But I think she was behind a screen, so it's not quite the same. We've got... I will say this is... I mean, I mentioned the fact that, yes, the new M seems to be British Indian, and the new Greenway, whoever he is, seems to is black. And then we have this secretary here who...
Do you have...
I don't know. She looks... I don't know. Not white, but that's... I mean, I've got a point here. I'm not about to launch into some racist thing.
An appointment?
The name's Bond.
James Bond.
And then we've got Moneypenny. I assume this is Moneypenny. I assume that because she's very in keeping with Eve Moneypenny from the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, who I absolutely love. And once again, all of this is completely representative of the modern day civil service. The modern day civil service is a very egalitarian place. Civil service is a very egalitarian place. You have people from all sorts of backgrounds. They actually have preference for like smart, well-educated people from different backgrounds rather than a bunch of posh white guys from Eton. So I have no issue with this. What I will say, which I think is kind of cool, is so far, if you remember all the stories when Daniel Craig retired, everyone was like, oh, who's the next James Bond going to be? Is the next James Bond going to be a woman? Is the next James Bond going to be black? And a lot of us were like, hey, look, we're not racist and anything like that, but we want James Bond to be James Bond. Like Ian Fleming created a character of James Bond, and in that character he has blue eyes, which infers heavily that he is white, and therefore, we just like James Bond to remain James Bond. So what they've done so far, which is kind of genius, is we have that James Bond, but he's also a minority, because it's so far the only white person we've seen in this trailer, which again I'm completely fine with. I think that I am stoked about all of this so far. I'm really, really excited. I just want to throw that in there as a little bit thing. Maybe I'll get cancelled for saying it, but I think it's kind of cool. I think it's a really neat way of doing it. What they've done is to have a more diverse a game that represents diversity in a better way. Instead of messing with James Bond, the core character, they've just reworked the people who surround him, which to a certain extent they'd already started doing in the Daniel Craig movies. And I like that. It works. I think that's a very elegant way to have a game that that is, representative of what 2025 looks like, while at the same time not messing around with a character that old farts like me know and love.
He's with me.
And you are? Don't think we've had the pleasure.
Okay, don't think we've had the pleasure. So, he's walking through, she's leading him through. This is the first kind of office thing that we've got here. It's kind of interesting. Do you notice these walls are corrugated iron, it looks like? I don't know what that means, but this seems to be an office thing with all these people here. If we play just a second longer, look, she looks is that a she? I think it's a she. Looks like she's looking at an aeroplane, and I guess these guys are all intelligence analysts. So this is where people do all their intelligence analysis of what's going on in the world. And then we go.
We've had the pleasure.
Now let's not.
And this, I assume, is Q's laboratory. And we've got a little robot arm thing here. Again, we've got the corrugated iron all the way around it, which is kind of interesting, because that makes you think, where is this? If you've got like corrugated iron in the silos. And then we've got someone up here. I assume this is going to be Q. And he's got a car underneath his tarp. That looks to me very much like an Aston Martin Valkyrie, the one we saw for like 3/5 of a second in No Time to Die. It's like their brand new supercar. I think it looks ridiculous, to be honest, but I'm kind of interested in where that's going.
Not get ahead of ourselves, James.
Now, who is this chap? Is this Q? Bloody hell. I mean, what a dashing cad. I wouldn't leave him alone with my children. And I mean that just because, look at him. He looks like the handsome cad who's off gallivanting with some woman third his age. Very handsome. His little handlebar moustache, no, pencil moustache here. His glasses, his beautiful sleek hair. It looks like he's either wearing, I think that's a cravat, or else that's a shirt. One of those dress shirts that has like the paisley inside part, which I kind of think is interesting. If this is Q, this is very interesting new take on Q. I have no issues with it. Kind of like it. Must be Q. He's wearing a white coat. It's an Omega watch. It's a whole thing of Omega watches, and these look like I'd have to ask an expert which exact type of Omega watch this is. But look at it. Like a video game, but it's got the James Bond Omega watches in. They've even got the little Spectre strap there. So, ooh, I love this. Here we go. So this clearly must be Q. That is a cravat he's wearing. It's not his shirt. And he's giving our new James Bond his fancy new watch. And look at that cool jacket he's wearing. So there we go. Oh, and it sets off something. Classic James Bond gag. Like all of the best James Bond movies have a scene where James Bond goes in and he fiddles with something he shouldn't do, and something goes off, and it's like, oh my god. And look at this, we've got a Triumph dirt bike. That's Triumph, best of British engineering here. Also, another very classic James Bond brand. He was in Triumph was in No Time to Die at the very least, and it's sending out fire flames in the back. That does not look safe. I don't know if this bike is going to pass its MOT, but we'll see.
You shouldn't have.
And then he's fighting Land Rover Defender. We got a Land Rover Defender in this trailer. I mean, this is like all of a shopping list of all of the best Bond brands. I love it. Here he is fighting with everyone. Now, I'm not as much of a gun expert as anyone, but what kind of gun is that? That doesn't look like a PPK. I'm not quite sure what type of gun that is. I'll have to do some further research. I want to go out on a limb and say it's a Heckler and Koch, but I honestly don't know if I'm even remotely close with that. But here he is. He's clearly doing his training montage here. So he's part of the 00 program. There he is, learning his fighting techniques. Clearly he's a badass fighter. And then he's doing the shooting. And I imagine in the game, this part of the game is going to be where you're like your tutorial, where you learn how to do all the cool things that you want to do. And to me, I think that's really important. Like I like video games. The video games to me that I played all the way through have been the ones with really good intuitive controls. And one of the reasons I kind of dropped out of the James Bond franchise a bit was when GoldenEye Reloaded came on the Wii, and there wasn't an intuitive like control style, and you had to mess around a lot with your mobile phone, and it just removed the immersion. So I prefer games that really have a seamless control, and you get to do badass things, and it becomes like muscle memory within a few things. So I'm kind of excited by this. And now he's doing a polygraph test, which is interesting. That's Greenway in the background, I believe. So yeah, Greenway, I imagine, is still skeptical of him. Let's see what we've got here. We've got breathing, duct action, blood pressure. So yeah, this seems 48% lie, 52% truth. So yeah, this is a polygraph. James Bond is being polygraphed to see whether he's telling the truth or not. He doesn't seem too fussed about it. He's smirking.
We're facing
Ooh, 10% truth, 89% lie. He's telling a lie. He's still smirking about it, though. What could that be about?
a situation of the
Okay, we're facing a situation here, and look, all of these people. I think this is the new 00 section. You've got this tank of a guy here. I think this is James Bond because he's wearing the same jacket. We've got a slim lady here in a red jacket. This guy here. Yeah, interesting. They're all in M's office. A little stack of folders out here. Kind of like that. It reminds me of Thunderball, where they brought in all of the 00 agents, and they all sat down and all got the same briefing. So I kind of like that, going back to the idea of having a team of people, and James Bond is just one member of the 00 section instead of it always being about him.
facing a situation of the utmost delicacy. I need all my
Okay, we're facing a situation of the utmost delicacy. And then we immediately go here. Where are we here? 125th Anniversary Gala, Hall of Mechanics. I don't know where this is, but James Bond bumps into this guy. So I think this is him actually out in the field. I think he is pickpocketing him.
pieces on the board.
So he stole his invite. I think that was very clearly. He stole his invite. So I think what we're seeing now is some of the gameplay mechanics. And I know IO Interactive made the Hitman games. I've never actually played them, and I might actually give them a try. But I think it's a third-person perspective game where you go around and you have to do stuff like bump into this person, steal their keycard, get to the next thing so you can get through the door. So let's see.
Is on the board.
So yeah, these I think are all gameplay things of him jumping through windows, doing Hitman stuff. Is this the same location? I don't know.
009 is a master manipulator.
009 is a master manipulator. What can that mean? Where is this place? I believe this looks like it's in the Swiss Alps. I'm going to say, I don't know, it could be any mountains anywhere. But this looks like one of these big, intimidating villas that they've got that, you know, all those... What's that crazy group of super rich billionaires who get together every year in Switzerland, in Basel, Switzerland or something, just, I don't know, play Monopoly with real hotels. But yeah, so James Bond is clearly infiltrating something there. The fact that he says 009 is a master manipulator, maybe 009 is the bad guy in this game.
Whatever the end game is.
Here we've got a chessboard going on in the center, two people playing chess. I like that. Harks back to From Russia with Love, with the opening scenes with Kronstein. And Kronstein knows if he doesn't leave immediately, he'll get executed. But he stays just to win the chess match. And there's a whole bit about how this shows, you know, how egotistical he is, but also how dangerous Spectre is. I kind of think that's interesting. I didn't realize that people watch chess matches with quite such rapt attention. I can't read any of the things here, but it's interesting, these two people playing against each other.
We won't see.
Boom. They're playing a chess here. She's moving the queen, the most important piece on the board, of course. She's playing whites, he's playing blacks.
It coming.
Ooh, that's James Bond hitting somebody again. This all seems to be more gameplay stuff. I mean, this looks pretty exciting to me. There he is, blowing stuff up. I don't know what gun that is, but if this is the gameplay and it's fun to play, and an old fart like me can keep up with it, I'm really stoked. Here he is, to room 206. Don't know what that means. Beautiful French maid. So I think this is saying it's still that same like mansion thing. James Bond dressed as a bellboy, holding a box there, but this room is completely wrecked. I like this because this is a very James Bond thing where, you know, he wrecks a room and then he walks out and says some quip.
Jet lag. Gets me every time.
Some quip like that. And now we go to an ultra modern party that's going on. I kind of like this. This I think is interesting because this represents, you know, the modern age. People have parties and stuff like that, and they're not something that's really represented in James Bond games, because James Bond films, because James Bond is normally an older guy in his 40s, and he doesn't get invited to hip happenings like this.
She's not your friend, Bond. She's an asset.
With respect.
Ooh, she's not your friend, Bond. She's an asset. Let's go back just a wee bit to see. So he's in here. I don't know what this is.
Not your friend, Bond.
But here he is. He's wandering through. He's touching his ear. Don't touch your ear. I remember that from Casino Royale.
She's an asset.
And then there's the Omega watch. Isn't that cool? I think that's a slightly different strap than the one we saw earlier. Yeah. Omega Watch is in the game. I love it. Also, how cool are these graphics? You can see every single thread of this of his jacket, and like even the pores on his skin. This is very different from GoldenEye 64. I like that. She's an asset. She's not your friend, because James Bond, as a character, he always falls for the girls, doesn't he?
With respect, Mom.
And he's using his watch with a laser to distract someone.
To hell with that.
And yeah. This I'm super stoked about. What do we see here? If you know your backsides like I know my backsides, this is an Aston Martin DBS, a poop yellow one, which is exactly what Roger Moore drove in The Persuaders, which was a very cool show in the 70s. And Aston Martin V8s, and I think the DBS actually had a 6-cylinder, but they're just amazing cars. Driving through Switzerland. Ooh. Let's go back here, just to see. So he's chasing somebody, going through, I think this is Switzerland. And he's chasing somebody. We can see that road sign very much looks like a European road sign. I think it says, I can't read what that says, but yeah, Europe. And then that is an Aston Martin. Unless it's a Jaguar, that could actually be the Jaguar symbol. I think it's an Aston Martin. So it's chasing an Aston Martin. Ooh, James Bond's here. It's a British car, because he's on this side of it, and he has this lady in there. Who is that lady? We don't know. And he's dressed, if you notice, he's dressed in the bellboy outfit. Here we go. He's dressed in the bellboy outfit from earlier, so maybe that maid who burst in on him isn't a maid at all. She's one of his team members, and they're working together. It looks kind of cool here. Like, this is a James Bond we like. His hair's a bit ginger. The actor who plays this guy, and I think it's amazing. And the actors in video games, they like totally copy them. If you've ever seen the Jedi Survivor games, the actor who plays Cal Kestis or something looks exactly like the character, and I kind of like that. But this guy, look, he's got a good James Bond look on him there. He looks like James Bond in this. So this, I think, is gameplay, and I kind of like it. I mean, I'm sorry, if there's a video game where you can drive a 1969 poop yellow Aston Martin DBS, I'm 1000% sold already on this game. You could have this level and nothing else, and I would still buy it. Oh, there we go. So they're chasing again. I just want to go back a sec just to see. First of all, stick shift. Obviously, James Bond is driving a stick shift. Obviously, the best cars are all stick shift. And these days, like a lot of supercars have automatic transmissions, because, you know, with modern technology, automatic transmissions are actually better than stick shifts. But a manual transmission car is just such a pleasure to drive, and it's such a skill. Like, if you want to, if a woman wants to impress me, she's like, I drive stick, and I'm like, oh, because yeah, it's a dying art, and I know so many men who can't drive stick these days, and yeah, my wife can drive stick. I think that was one of the things I remember thinking was really attractive about her when I first met her. It was like, oh, she can drive stick. She's not like one of these regular Americans. She can drive a stick shift. Anyway, he's putting his pedal to the metal, and then we barely saw it. I don't think we can quite catch. Yeah, we still can't see what that car is. I think it's a red Aston Martin, though. Oh, look at that. Look at that big Hollywood style. Which, to be honest, is a representation of how an Aston Martin DBS V8 would... Aston Martin DBS would drive. Because they are big, heavy cars, rear-wheel drive. So you would lose the back end quite easily, I think. This looks exciting, though. And there's... Ooh, there's a plane coming into land. Are they trying to get to that guy before that guy gets to that plane? I don't know. Here we are somewhere else. This is a different location. This classic silhouette of the Walther PPK with its silencer. It says screwing on the silencer of the Walther PPK. Boom. Oh, that was loaded. That was quite bad. I like this. This is kind of cool because, like in the trailer for Skyfall Inspector, they do the location changes. Oh, someone grabbed him. He's fighting another guy.
Tell me, what do you do, James?
Here we go. Now, where are they now? What do you do, James? I don't know who this guy is, but he looks like a dickhead. with his long hair and smarmy expression. James Bond here, if you notice, he is back in his outfit from earlier, like the leather jacket when he first walked in. And I wonder if this is a scene where we get introduced to the new members of the 00 team, and they're all super young, and they are looking down on James Bond because he's an orphan and he doesn't fit in and stuff like that. It's kind of, they kind of covered this territory in Kingsman, which was massively inspired by James Bond, so it's kind of interesting to go back to it. But one of the things that was very characteristic of James Bond that appeals to me, like the reason James Bond as a character appeals to me, is he was always a fish out of water. He was always the odd one out. He never quite fit in. And I think it would be kind of cool if they revisited that as a character trait in this. So whoever this guy is, I don't know, but they're drinking champagne. They're at some fancy party.
Lately, headhunting.
Ooh, where are we now? This reminds me of that scene from Skyfall where he goes to the casino in Macau for the first time. I don't know where this is. I'm gonna hazard an ill-educated guess and say Thailand, because you've got these towering rocks here. So maybe this is like, maybe they'll have James Bond Island in Phuket. I don't know, but powerboat. That looks like one of those beautiful old bespoke wooden powerboats they have. You see them often in like Venice and stuff like that. They're, what are they called? I can't remember the name of them, but they're like beautiful, beautiful, incredibly expensive boats. We have a beautiful girl here. She's clearly an agent because she's raising her eyebrow like that, and she's got a cool watch and stuff. But yeah, a Bond girl. And there, oh, look at him, suave bastard. Very Daniel Craig thing here. I do like his hair is a bit ginger. I'm not going to lie. I think it's meant to be dark, but it's a bit ginger. And looking super suave with James Bond with his little polo shirt on and stuff like that. This is classic James Bond. Ooh, and now a bit of scuba diving. Another classic James Bond trope. And they're holding onto these things that like power them through the water. You saw a lot of those in Thunderball. You can buy them in BJ's now. I think it's amazing. So I might grab one of those and use those in the pool this summer. Now they're on a luxurious boat. And James Bond in a t-shirt. And there's, ooh, that looked like a beautiful girl coming on with champagne. Here we go. Yes. Oh no, a martini, shaken not stirred. Beautiful girl wearing just an overshirt. So maybe they've finished a mission, and this is reminiscent of that bit in The Living Daylights where his parachute catches fire and he falls onto the roof of a boat and he swings off, and there's that girl there who's like, oh, it's so boring here, there's nothing but tennis pros and millionaires. And then James Bond arrives and she's like, I need a real man. So here we go. I like that. It's another throwback. There have been all sorts of different throwbacks. The one thing that I didn't even notice, I didn't even mention, is in the background right now you will hear the music from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that to me once again is like a when they played that in No Time to Die, I literally had tears in my eyes. I was like, oh my god, they're making the James Bond movie for him. For me, that's how what I felt like with No Time to Die. They were making a Bond movie for me. The fact they're including it in this game, I just love. I am sold on completely. Now, where are we now? This looks like some kind of reactor or something sinister. Is this chap Greenway, or is that just some chap? I don't know. Is that chap Q, or is it just some chap? There are lots of other people in white suits. I've got a feeling this is like some bad guy's evil lair or something, but we don't have enough information to go off at the moment. Ooh, James Bond being punched and interrogated, which I like. Oh my god, that's such a staple of the books, isn't it? You always have to have the scene where James Bond gets captured and interrogated. This outfit here, it's black polo neck, kind of Archer-style tactical polo neck, and that looks kind of like the Billy Reed peacoat. I don't think it is meant to be the Billy Reed peacoat, but it's kind of, again, a very Daniel Craig outfit. I like it. He's getting beaten up. Where are they? Lots of statues and stuff. This reminds me of the building that was under construction that they had that fight scene in the beginning part of Quantum of Solace, if you remember, with the scaffolding and all of the old statues and stuff. So interesting. And this is him dressed once again as the bellboy. And he's grabbing a sword off the wall. There are some old bottles here, so they're probably in a wine cellar somewhere. So I think we're now going right back to the beginning part of the trailer where we saw him in that fancy castle in Switzerland. And that, oh, here we go. So much happening so quickly. So, let's see if I can pause this enough. He's crashing down onto something on top of this guy. He's wearing a shirt. That, to me, looks very much like the shirt that Daniel Craig wore in the first scenes of Casino Royale, which I kind of like. Is this the same location? Is this a new location? I don't know. And now he's driving what looks like a... Wait, what was that? Okay. That looks like a garbage truck. He's driving a garbage truck through the wall of somewhere. It actually looks like he's driving it through a building because they've got like the plant here. They got like a bench against the wall. They've got a statue here. So I don't know what he's doing driving a garbage truck through a building. But if you buy the game, you will find out. And there he is, looking really badass. He's wearing the same clothing that he wore in the scene in which he was getting tortured. The polo neck and the jacket. His face isn't busted up, though. So one can presume that this scene occurs before he gets tortured. Who is that guy? That's really interesting. So, we've got... there's a couple of sketchy-looking dudes in masks and balaclavas here. That green light normally means they've got like night vision goggles or something. All of the beautiful statues and art makes me think maybe this is the same location as where James Bond was being tortured earlier. And this guy, who's wearing a gold mask, which is really interesting. I'm not quite sure what type of weapon that is. I'm going to have to talk to Caleb Daniels about this, but or Ray from the Bond Armory. But it's cool. I like it. This is a spooky, but if this is the henchman wearing his gold mask, I'm sold. He looks intimidating. And then, oh, there's James Bond. This, again, seems to be a museum of some description. He's about to do the thing, guys. He's about to do the thing. Bang! He did the thing. I love that. So, whew, a lot to cover there. First light. Love it. What's going on here? I love this. So, alligators. What? Live and let die. Gotta think live and let die. It was about time they brought the alligators back, and you have these two hanging from their wrists and ankles. I think that's James Bond there. I think he's wearing that Daniel Craig Casino Royale shirt that we saw earlier. I don't know who the other person is. There we go. Look at those eyes. So blue. Bunch of people are watching him. That's interesting. Who is this guy? I've got a feeling, and I could be completely wrong, but maybe that's Greenway. I don't know.
Suppose this is another teachable moment.
Is that Greenway? I don't know. It would make sense if it was, because it's like a teachable moment, so he's like some kind of mentor to the young James Bond. It doesn't look like him, though, because Greenway like had the grey beard and was much older and wore a suit jacket, so this could be a different character. There we go. And look at him. He looks absolutely magnificent. He's got a Walther PPK there. He's got an outfit that's very, very reminiscent of something Daniel Craig would wear. He's young and handsome. He's got the scar on his cheek, his hair. Love it. Coming 2026. Earn the number. So maybe that's what the point is. This whole point of First Light is James Bond is a young rookie and he's got to earn his 00 number. And that's the point of the game. So, and here we go. First Light, earn the number. I love this. He is in the Roger Moore Live and Let Die and also Spectre outfit of the black polo neck with the shoulder holster. Sign up to an IOI account to unlock on-duty outfit skin and gilded wraith weapon skin. So, I might go and sign up and get those. On-duty outfit skin. So if you want the Spectre outfit, if you want this outfit, you have to go right now and sign up for an IO account. I'm going to do that immediately. In fact, yeah, you should do that immediately as well. Look at him. Look at him. I love it. Is that it? I think that's it. I think that is it. So there we go. Tune in for the gameplay revealed this summer. So I will be tuning in. Wow, I am super, super stoked for this game. I'm going to make another video about it in a more esoteric general fashion. But yeah, isn't this cool? Isn't this cool? I am super, super stoked. And IO Interactive, I just want to say, I love every choice you've made. Every choice across the board. I am completely here for it. I am 100% down for whatever you give us. It looks amazing, and I can't wait to play it.